Howdy, Space Rangers, Phoenix here. Today, this is the last part of my 100 subscriber special, and boy am I glad I'm ending it this way. Today we're going to be reviewing a movie that has been with me since my childhood. Hell, it's been with me since basically the very beginning. I grew up with this movie and I have a lot of emotions to this movie. I really love it so much, and I don't care whether I get copyright struck or whatever. I need to make this review, if not for you guys, at least for myself. This movie and I are like soulmates essentially, cause it came out on 30th May 2003, and even though I'm a full month ahead, I decided to commemorate its 18th anniversary. And why? Why the number 18? Why is it so important that I have to review this movie? Why do I have to review Finding Nemo today? Because I'm also turning 18. Yes, I was born on May 2003. And so, before I become an official adult soon, hello ladies, I want to look back on this great movie. I want to review Finding Nemo. I know I've talked about this movie in the past. I know I've referenced it like in a lot of lists and short reviews of mine, but I wanted to dedicate an entire video to it. I want to dedicate an entire video talking about why I love Finding Nemo. This is my review of Finding Nemo. I love it, and I just thought I would give my thoughts on this beautiful, wonderful masterpiece of a movie, and why I think it's just one of the greatest forms of media of all time, and how it affected my life and probably a bunch of others. This movie made my childhood, and I feel that I have to give it justice by doing this review. This is Finding Nemo. So I guess it makes sense for us to start with the story. The story is great and unique. The story of a father, the movie of a father losing his whole family and trying to find and reconnect with his kidnapped son. It is something that has, I don't think, been done before in an animated movie. I mean, definitely there's, oh, I gotta find my family before, such like for example, like an American Tale, where we have this kid who's separated from his family and he has to find them again. Or Home Alone, where we have this kid who's stuck at home and he needs his family to come back and find him. We've had those stories before, but in an animated movie like this, where it's not from the kid's perspective, it's from the parent's perspective, which is very rare to see in an animated movie, because usually animated movies focus on kids or teenagers or things like that. Very rarely do we focus on parents and such, and when we do, it's mostly like in a sequel and not written well. Here, this movie is focused on the adult. As much as the movie is called Finding Nemo, Marlin is the main character, and we focus on his story as he tries to reconnect with his son, as he actually swims the whole ocean to go and find him. And so I don't really think it's been done in an animated movie before, because he lost his family. Nemo is the last surviving member. Just imagine what a sucker punch that is. And like, this is our main character. Imagine this is the first thing we're introduced to in this movie. And so, yeah, I really like the story because of that. I also like the episodic structure it gives. How we don't really have a real antagonist. There's no big bad guy throughout the movie chasing down Marlin and Dory or anything like that. It's sort of like a most of the week style storytelling. For those who don't know most of the week, it's really like where we have a TV show, and let's say it's a group of superheroes. So every week the superheroes fight a new villain. Thus, most of the week, because TV shows release their episodes weekly. And so I like how this movie is structured in a sort of episodic structure, where Marlin and Dory face off against a new predator or creature, and then we come back to Nemo, and then come back to Marlin and Dory facing a new creature. Sort of like, again, an episode. So I really like that. Another thing I'll give this movie is that it's big. It is like big or go home big. That's how big this movie is. Even though like it's a simple story of a father looking for his son, the stakes are high, the tensions are high. The whole ocean itself feels big. Like you can actually feel like you're actually in the deep blue sea. It doesn't feel like you're like the whole movie is confined to just the box of the TV screen. The movie tries to make itself feel as vast as possible. Like this is an entirely new world you're stepping into, which water setting. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I love fish and I love the ocean, and this movie made me go into marine biology, and I just love the underwater setting. Again, I love how we're in this big ocean with the water, the fish, the different creatures, the plants. Everything just feels so big and so real. Like every time I would go to the beach with my family, I'm like, damn, like they actually tried their best to nail down this movie, and you can't really be too mad at that. Now I guess we gotta talk about the characters next. The characters again, we have Marlin. I already talked about Marlin. He's a parent and grieving because he lost his entire family, all but one child. Because of that, he becomes a helicopter parent. Very natural progression. And so throughout the movie, we get to follow Marlin's journey throughout the entire ocean, where he learns that one day he will have to let Nemo go. He can't just, helicopter Nemo for the rest of his life. He can't protect him from the outside world. Otherwise, how will Nemo face up against the outside world? So he has to learn to let Nemo have fun and enjoy himself. And so, really, this movie has, this movie is crazy. This movie has got big balls, and it grows bigger balls by going a step further and putting Marlin through hell by giving him a scene, which is the whale scene, by the way, where he's actually stuck in the belly of the whale. Okay, well, it's not really inside the belly of the whale, but him and Dory are trapped in the whale, and obviously later on the whale does help them. But at the time we don't know that, the audience doesn't know that, and this movie actually went the extra step by having Marlin be stuck in the whale and honestly put him through that grief, that horror, that I thought that he might never see his son again, that the journey might end here. He will die without ever saving his son. That is powerful. Instead of having this movie do a false third act breakup where Marlin and Dory go their ways. I mean, they kind of do it a bit later, but here, this is the true third act breakup. This is the depressing part of the movie. This is where Marlin, gets the lesson of the movie, where he finally understands how his parenting skills were not perfect. And I really love this whale scene where he honestly is just terrified that the adventure might end here. And instead of it being any other movie, if this were any other movie, they would have had Marlin and Dory, kind of break up through the film and Marlin just give up on Nemo. But no, Marlin and Dory only break up in this movie because Marlin thinks Nemo is dead. Any other movie, Marlin could have just given up on the adventure, not bothered to go find Nemo anymore. This movie actually went through that part where Marlin is depressed before he splits up with Dory. I really like that. And so in the end, I just really like Marlin's character because he's a character who has to reconnect with his old, fun, caring self. And the love that he has for his son is more than proven in this movie by the fact that he crossed an entire ocean to get to him. I just love this character and I love his growth. Honestly, again, I know the movie's called Finding Nemo, but I think we can all agree it's really Finding Marlin. Next up, we have Dory. Dory is that character who's supposed to remind Marlin of his older self and acts as a stand-in for Nemo. She is funny, naive, and a walking representation for how simply having childhood innocence will not get you far in the real world. Again, I love Dory, and I feel like Ellen DeGeneres plays a really great role in Dory. Like when I feel like Ellen DeGeneres is really good playing Dory. Like she goes all out when she plays Dory. I don't think anyone else could have given Dory the same amount of personality than Ellen DeGeneres did. That's what I'm saying. Like I'm an Ellen fan. I just feel like Ellen was perfect for this role for Dory. And again, what I say about Dory, being naive and silly, yeah, it's fun. She is funny. I find Dory to be a funny character, but also like her representation in this movie. She's a character with childhood innocence. She's essentially the SpongeBob of this movie. But this movie goes ahead to show that childhood innocence will not get you far in the real world. Simply going with a big smile and hoping everyone is a good guy will not do you favors. I swear, if it wasn't for Marlin and his pessimistic nature, Dory would have been dead time and time again. Hell, she even gets hurt because she's so so disconnected from the real world. It kind of makes you wonder how the hell she survived this long. And so yeah, I really like Dory, and I really like how the movie treats her, where it just says, hey guys, just because you give the world all smiles and such doesn't mean the world will smile back on you. It's a cold, cruel world, and sometimes you gotta go in being a bit cold and cruel yourself. That's why Marlin was actually able to survive this long. Can I also just say that I love how this movie did not make Marlin's new love interest? Again, any other movie would have gone this cliche route, and it just would not have made sense. I love the fact that their relationship is entirely platonic, and it's just neat. I feel like I shouldn't be too hard on Dory though, because she really does come into her own in the sequel. Finding Dory is really Dory's movie, and maybe one day I'll do like a character dissection of Dory in that movie, because she really is a great character in that movie. But for this movie alone, I feel like she fits that real well. She's the comic relief, she's the stand-in for Nemo, and on top of that, she's also a nice walking message of the movie. Well done, Dory. Next up, we have Nemo himself, the man of the main title. Nemo is an interesting case. He starts out not really having any respect for his father. Obviously, he says, I hate you, but he doesn't really mean it. And he just views his father as a coward, like he's too afraid of the ocean. And so I really like how this movie treats Nemo, where it's not telling him you're fully wrong or you're fully right. It actually takes its time to show us his growth. And even though Nemo's scenes are like way less than Marlin's, I really like the lesson he has to learn. For example, he has to learn what the real world is like without his dad. I mean, it's not like his dad was gonna, show him the real world like the Marlin was gonna do that anytime soon. But I like how he had to go through it himself. His father wasn't there to accompany him, and Nemo had to kind of like do it on his own. I also like how he becomes rebellious because he's sick of his dad's pestering, and honestly, that kind of leads to gain him kidnapped because it's essentially like, oh, dad, I don't like you. You're pestering me too much. I'm gonna rebel against you. Boom. What happens? He gets kidnapped. Oh wow, Nemo, you didn't listen to your dad. How funny is that? So I really like the parallels here, where we find on one end Marlin is right, but Nemo is also right on another end. Marlin needs to teach Nemo about the real world, but on the other end, Nemo can't just disobey his father and kind of expect to get away with it. There is a nice middle ground that this movie treads, and it delivers that message perfectly. And throughout his time with the Tank Gang, he learns his lesson, which is the direct opposite to which is in direct opposite to Marlin's. Again, which is the direct opposite to which is in direct opposite to Marlin's. Again, their lessons kind of go against each other. Marlin has to learn to live life again. Nemo has to learn to be cautious in life. Nemo can't have too much fun, but Marlin can't be too closed off from the world. I like how their lessons are in parallel to each other. Really good. Also, can I just say that moment where can I just say I love that scene where Nigel the pelican comes to tell Nemo about Marlin's escapades, how Marlin survived sharks and jellyfish and anglerfish. That moment, I don't know, it just makes me feel so warm inside. It really just pops me up with something, I don't know. Just hearing about Nigel telling Nemo about how his father survived this and this, all in a bid to get to Nemo. And Nemo really, you can just see it in this kid's eyes that he really understands how much his father loves him, that he's willing to risk life and limb to get him, which again is really good for this movie. This movie just kind of tells kids like me when I was young how our parents really love us to the point that they would die for us. Nemo, when he's being told about his father's adventures, you can just see how at that moment it clicks in his head how much he admires and views Marlin not just as his father but as his hero. That speech just left me awestruck, and it was a great speech. Freaking Nigel, you're a hero, Nigel. It's a shame all other Nigels kind of disappoint you. Like, I know a lot of people really hate the name Hunter. I just hate the name Nigel. So yeah. And so, yeah, back to Nemo's lessons. He learns that fun is good, but too much fun and breaking the rules can be catastrophic, even. And so, I really like how these two lessons, Nemo's lesson and Marlin's lesson, flow in such a way that Marlin and Nemo have to come to an understanding and reach a compromise to strengthen their relationship. By the end of the movie, Marlin isn't treating Nemo like a baby anymore. He's treating him like he's a more mature person, like he's growing up. And I like the fact that they actually reach a compromise by the end of the movie. Marlin can be overprotective of Nemo. Any parent has to be protective of their child, but they also have to learn to let their child live life. I really like that. It's a really good message. I feel this film excels at. And then there's Gil, the leader of the Tank Gang. Gil is supposed to act as the oh my god. Gil is supposed to act as the father figure to Nemo. Oh my god. Gil is supposed to act as a father figure to Nemo and stand in for Marlin, sort of like how Dory stood in for Nemo for Marlin. And so he's the one who encourages Nemo to break out of the tank and even teaches him fun and, to live life to the fullest even though they're stuck in the tank. I also really like Gil's character and even teaches him fun and, to live life to the fullest even though they're stuck in the tank. I also really like Gil's character, like on a personal level, where he's self-absorbed but not the antagonist. Gil is a very selfish person, and if you watch the movie, you will see that. Like, he's literally putting a child through like life-threatening situations just so he could escape the tank and get back to the ocean. But here's the thing, he doesn't become the villain of the movie. Gil does not become the antagonist or anything, and I really like that. He hasn't tried to steal or kill Nemo to get out of the tank. Again, any other movie would have made Gil the villain. He would have been the guy who tries to kill Nemo just so he can escape from the tank, just so he could get back to the ocean. But in this movie, they do it differently. Gil puts Nemo through a very tough situation. Nemo barely makes out of the situation alive, and instead of Gil forcing Nemo to go through it again, he backs off. He actually chillaxes, and he's like, I'm so sorry, Nemo. I did not mean to do that to you. I was so busy thinking about myself and getting back to the ocean that I never considered your safety or anything like that. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's actually pretty cool. As a kid, I obviously didn't think that, but now I'm like, yeah, again, any other movie, and this would be a different story. So I really like how this movie honestly treats its characters. And then, even though he's a small character in the movie, we gotta talk about this next guy. Bruce. Bruce is, again, a small character in this movie. He doesn't really do a lot. Though I like the little subtle messages of him, Bruce is sort of like the living example of people with problems. And while it's okay to help them, it's not your job or responsibility to solve them. Bruce kind of puts Marlon and Dory in a situation where they're not comfortable with it. He's like, yo, guys, come with me to this party. And they're like, oh, not so sure about this. And, like, I really like that. Because, again, if Marlon and Dory were there to solve Bruce's problems, or if they stuck around too long, they would be dead. And plus, he scared the living crap out of me as a kid. I mean, who was not... Tell me, when you were a kid and you watched this movie, I dare you to tell me you weren't traumatized by this scene.
Hello. Well, hi. And I understand why trust a shark, right? Let's go. Innovation!
I dare you to tell me that wasn't terrifying. The Ten Gang were fun, but they weren't too interesting. I don't feel like their characters were fleshed out enough. Well, except for this guy. Can also just say that I love the themes of this movie. This movie is saying that Marlon should come down as a